Minister Nitin Raut has hit back, saying that they are not doing any power politics in the state. Speaking exclusively to Mirror Now, he says that the state is able to provide 24/7 power supply with absolutely no load shedding. Listen in.
It is unfortunate if he is telling that there is a politics in some party in the states are playing. But it is not a case with the Maharashtra. Maharashtra is the only state who has given 24/7 power to their customers. And moreover, in this power crisis, also we are giving them 24/7 power to the people. And there was no load shedding in Maharashtra when the other states were having the load sheddings.
So he has basically indicated on, the several political parties who provide free electricity to get votes. Are you, do you think that this is a liable statement for Maharashtra government?
See, in Delhi, the case is different. They are having ample deposits of money. That's why they are playing the card to give free electricity to the Delhi people, because of the government of India is developing that city, more expending money, more poor money in Delhi city itself. That's why they are having more savings there. But this case is not with the other states. We have to pay the bills of the Coal India Limited. We have to pay the bills to the producers of electricity. We have to take loan from the banks also. Hence, there is no issue to give any concession or free electricity to the people.
All right, so we heard R.K. Singh there, the Union Power Minister, saying that this is nothing but just politics. And on the other hand, we also heard Nitin Raut there justifying the move, saying that this does not actually have an impact on the, the state's coffins. Now, to understand this whole issue, I am being joined by an expert on the broadcast this evening, Harry Dhol, DG of the Independent Power Producers Association of India. So thank you so much for joining us here on Mirror Now. Now, the first thing that I want to understand from you is, now, run up to the elections, we often see politicians promising free electricity. Akhilesh Yadav did that in UP. Power freebies are doled out in Punjab. We see it in Delhi, in Tamil Nadu. But what I want to understand is that how does this system of power freebies work? Because let's face the fact that nothing is free. So at the end of the day, somebody has to pay for it. So eventually, who bears the cost?
My sympathies go out to the discoms, the distribution companies, because they are sandwiched between meeting their social obligations by their political masters, whatever those instructions may be. And so they get sandwiched between that and trying to run a distribution company. So at the outset, I would say my sympathies are with the discoms, because they're sandwiched between following instructions, which are not necessarily commercially conducive for them to run a smooth operation. However, having said that, let me also say that this is not a new problem. Let me also state that this is a problem which has been there for the building up for the last 20, 25, 30 years.
Right.
Except that this kind of awareness was not there, and this kind of, shall I say, media reporting was not there. But this was going on for a long, long time. The discoms are supposed to be subsidized, as the union minister rightly said. The state government wants to give a subsidy to any section of the people, there's no problem at all. The Act provides for that. But then they have to get reimbursed by way of subsidy by the state government, and it has to be a part of their annual budget. I must say Maharashtra for quite some time has been paying the discom for the subsidization that has been going on. But I don't think it's a final payment or a full payment. I think there's a gap. I think it's also more than just free power for political purposes. It's also about overstaffing of distribution companies over the last 20, 30 years across India. It's about overheads. It's about a cost-plus environment. There's no incentive to get, shall I say, more competitive, because it's just a cost-plus environment, is sort of a monopoly situation. So, if at all you really want to tackle the problem, it's not just by saying that it's political mileage is being given or whatever. I think you need to look at reforming the distribution sector, bringing in competition, bringing in efficiency, bringing in better management. And I think that's where the focus should be, rather than just saying, you're giving away free power, because free power is a very small component of the losses that are in the system. So I think that's where it really stands.
So, Mr. Dhaul, you touched upon how, the discoms
Sorry?
here, you touched upon
Yeah.
how the discoms here are, at the center of this entire issue. Let's take, for example, Punjab. Now, Punjab is, putting a pressure of almost 1,200 crores on the state exchequer. Now, if you look at the figures from 2017, they have every year following, and this is because of the whole free power policy that they offer to the state. So now the Congress has defaulted on paying subsidy dues every year. So currently the outstanding bill is 10,000 crore. Nearly 10,000 crore is what, and this I'm talking about only one state. So when we look at the larger picture, that do you think that it's one thing to offer free electricity in the name of winning elections, but then on the other hand, in the long run, it is basically your discom companies that suffer. It's the sector eventually that suffers.
Yeah, ultimately it's the consumer who suffers. You're right. Let's take the case of Punjab, since you raised Punjab. Punjab has many challenges. The first is that you have to transport coal for thousands of kilometers to the power plants that they have, since they don't have coal in Punjab. The second challenge, I guess, is the fact that Punjab has a lot of residual costs which have been building up into the tariff of the consumer. And therefore, even the government of Punjab, I guess, would have a problem filling that gap in one shot, because it's been building over the years. You had some troubled times in Punjab in the 80s and 90s. A lot of issues have been put under the carpet. They're beginning to come up now. You have regulatory commissions in place. Streamlining is being done in Punjab. So there are a lot of residual costs which are not transferable easily to the consumer for obvious reasons, social and political. And also the fact that they can't afford expensive power, which are in a sense like a regulatory asset sitting there. And therefore you see all those lost figures.
Right.
But as I said, it's not an impossible situation that even a pretty smart state like Punjab can get its act together very quickly. But yes, again, at the cost of repeating, I would say I would not put all of it to just the political part of giving free power. Of course, the fact of the matter remains that these states, Punjab and Haryana, are a rice bowl and a wheat bowl of India. And therefore, they have at least 2 to 3 crops as compared to, say, other states where there are 1 or 2 crops. So the intensive irrigation that goes on in Punjab obviously consumes a lot of power. But the other point is, yes, would you rather have no grains and not have no food security? Well, it's a trade-off. So each state has its own individual peculiarities, and it's very difficult to just paint them all in a general brush, I would say. I would say that there's a lot of improvement in the last few years. And both the central government and the state government have been having meetings with all the concerned stakeholders of the power sector in trying to figure out ways and means to work together. And there are some recent policy decisions which have been taken with full consensus, or more or less full consensus. So I think it's moving forward. And I'm not a politician, but I would say that one has to look at it in a balanced way, because, for example, some states are totally dependent on monsoons. Some states don't have an extensive irrigation system like Haryana, Punjab, for example.
Right.
Some states have a challenge with regard to floods coming and destroying their crops, so they have to do all kinds of things. So I would sort of say, in a big country like India, I think we need to move forward in the way that we encourage and support the discoms and support the central government in what they are trying to do. And I think they're doing a hell of a lot given the kind of crisis we face, courtesy the Ukraine crisis and the global increase of tariffs. Energy costs have gone up not just in India, it's just across the world. In the United States, if you read the system, the TV, the petrol prices have doubled since Uncle Donald Trump left. So I think there is a crisis across the world. And I think it's a wake-up call for all of the states to get their act together, to cut down their losses, become more efficient. And why not provide services at the cheapest possible for the consumer? Ultimately, it's the consumer who's most important, isn't it?
Right. So Mr. Dhaul, putting everything in perspective, whatever you're saying, will it be correct to say that the recent shortage in, the coal and the power crisis is a direct outcome of this freebie culture?
I don't think so. I think it's a lot more than that, and I don't think it'll be covered in a TV debate like this. For example, let's take the case that we are not adding thermal capacity in this country. 72 to 73% of this country's power generation is from thermal capacity. Now, when you get a crunch, when you have a huge demand coming up, as is happening now, the economy is bouncing back, where do you meet that demand from? Renewables are there, but renewables are only 15, 20% of the plant load factor. For example, if you have installed a 100 megawatt plant, you can expect on an average 20 megawatts or 22 megawatts in a year. So you really have not invested in the last few years. And there are other reasons for that. One of the reasons, of course, is the fact that the discoms haven't paid the generators have got bankrupt. And as I said in my previous shows, the government needs to perhaps look at an idea where government dues are set off against bank dues so that the private sector doesn't get into trouble. There are issues with regard to getting, permissions, getting thermal plants off the ground. Everyone is focusing only on renewable. I've been saying this for a long time that yes, renewables is the way to go, but in the transition, we need to have a buffer of thermal. Right now, unfortunately, we are not adding capacity, rather new capacity. Whatever capacity we have, a large part of it is not running because it's facing bankruptcy charges because government dues are not being paid. So I think there's a lot more to it. And I wouldn't sort of blame all this on just freebies. That would be too flippant if I was to say so.
All right, Mr. Dhaul, it's quite a lot of important points that you've mentioned there. The most important being that we have to move towards renewables. And of course, there is no black and white answer to this. And we have to look, take a holistic view of this entire issue. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspectives here on Mirror Now. All right. We're taking a very short break here on Mirror Now. There's lots lined up on the other side. Stay tuned.